Hello everyone and welcome back to another Destiny 2 video. Today we're talking about this wonderful GamesRadar article that is done with Bungie's lead senior narrative, or I guess just senior narrative. Lead is kind of redundant, but senior, not a junior, a senior narrative designer, Robert Brooks. Now this article has gotten some pretty good attention. It's almost 2 weeks old at this point, so yeah, I might be a little late on this, but I still want to discuss it because it's very much so going to have a lot to do with not only year 6 but most likely year 7 of Destiny 2 as well. And it's not all that often we get a glimpse into the narrative makings of this game. This is certainly one of those times. So the first thing I want to dig into, I might rant a little bit, so excuse me if I rant. It's because I'm very passionate about this stuff. So again, forgive me, but I'm gonna try to stick to this and these quotes here, so bear with me. The first quote I want to dig into is, "There's a lot of narrative threads that were left unintentionally resolved to dig into and expand upon and feel the impact of." This, of course, is referring to Lightfall. And I just want to take a second and kind of dig into that, if you will. I understand that there is a need to leave threads unsolved so that people have a reason to play the seasons. I know it rhymed there. You're welcome. But the other thing here is, you didn't need to leave so many threads unsolved that nobody cares, right, about the actual story going on. And that was the problem with Lightfall, was that there was not enough told to care in the first place. I understand you're always going to need something that has to be solved after Lightfall. And we know what that is. That's how to follow the witness. Now, it shouldn't be what is the veil, and that's the biggest question of them all, and that still has not been answered, what the veil is. All we know, and there's some light spoilers ahead, I feel like that should be obvious, but I'll state it here, so I'll give you a second. You still here? If you are, why are you still here? Just kidding. If you know everything, thanks for sticking in. If not, I guess you don't care at this point. But, you know, we know the veil is something that is used to be able to be essentially a link to the darkness. And the witness was able to use it to connect with its own species, or its former species, if you will. And the veil is also able to connect to the travelers. So the veil is kind of like this object that deals majorly with connections. There's of course that whole community theory out there that the veil is just a giant mushroom, because fungus in the real world is all about connection. If you've seen The Last of Us, you know that the cordyceps in The Last of Us are connected. You step on one cordyceps on the ground, or a dead zombified human, a alive cordyceps is going to know where you are, even if they're 10 miles away. So very much so is the concept very similar to that of the veil. So, you know, it's a very interesting thing. So we kind of have an idea of what the veil is, but we don't know for sure. We didn't know what the witness's intentions were with the veil until recently, right? They want to rewrite history, which is a pretty big undertaking when you think about it, and to have found that out after the expansion is, again, just a major narrative miss, a huge miss, harder than I miss when I'm playing Destiny 2 PvP. Like, it's crazy. So let's get more into this quote here. Brooks continues by saying, "And then from season 22 and 23 onwards, it's the ramp up and lead into the dive into the final shape. It's a very different shape than what we're used to. So some of the narrative arcs might be done in a different way. That's very intentional." So there's this drift towards a newer and that's the end of the quote, by the way, there's a drift towards a sort of newer storytelling that Bungie's trying to do, and, you know, as much as I like the idea of doing something different, we haven't seen that yet. Season of the Deep is supposed to be the beginning of a different type of seasonal story arc, and it was really just the same thing, right? 6 weekly story missions followed up with cutscenes in between the beginning and the end, or at the beginning and the end of all of these, well, not all of the missions, but the first one, we had the intro cutscene, and then at the end, we had the outro cutscene. That's it. Of course, we had the exposition cutscene at the end of the season that, again, gave us all this information about the Witness, the Veil, etc. And that was the most important cutscene probably in the history of Destiny, because it gave us so much information. And, you know, this is a dead horse here. That cutscene should have been in Lightfall. That's all I'm gonna say, because I know it's been hashed again and again. But yeah, again, it was just a flop. It was a huge flop. So there's this longer quote here. I'm gonna read the whole thing and then give you my impression from it. So the quote starts with, "For the most part, the arcs were there and have been there, and the plan was basically in shape as we were making it," Brooks affirms. "It was the idea that the seasons would be able to take things that were there, the threads that were set up, and kind of follow them through to their natural course." Brooks points to the Veil containment as a key foreshadowing reservoir, which continues the examination of the cosmic thingamajig called the Veil, and quietly hints at a lot of stuff to come for seasons and expansions. He says the trail of breadcrumbs is a way we're experimenting with new narrative delivery systems to tell different kinds of stories and shake things up a little bit from what people have been expecting. This is the thing that blows my mind, and should blow your mind if you've been playing Destiny for any amount of time for the past year. Breadcrumbs are what we are used to. This is not a different way of telling a story. This is the same way, except now, instead of treating expansions like the giant piece of steak, you know, it's your dinner, right? Think of Destiny like a meal, right? The whole entirety of an expansion is the steak, potatoes, and vegetables. If you're a vegetarian, impossible meat, I don't know, whatever. And the season within the expansion is kind of like the dessert, or maybe a drink, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And the seasons after are your smaller meals in between dinner, right? A nice little breakfast, some eggs and toast, and then, you know, you have whatever, maybe a snack is the final season before Lightfall, because that can kind of feel like forever while you're waiting for the big one. And the point here is there's supposed to be some kind of large payoff in an expansion. For the Witch Queen, it was killing Savathun. That's what happened. For Lightfall, I don't know what's the big payoff. Nothing. There was none. We didn't stop the Witness. Ronan died. Someone we didn't, or Rohan, whatever his name is. Like, the big payoff was, we know what Strand is. We learned how to use Strand. I'm not going to rehash too much on Lightfall, but you compare Witch Queen and in Lightfall, there's no giant payoff. There's no steak and potatoes and vegetables. It's just a snack to tide us over until the final shape. This really does seem like it just doesn't make sense to me. It would make sense if they were like, oh, we're going to treat Season of the Deep like a larger expansion. We're going to have more story than usual. But that wasn't it. That didn't happen. It's the same breadcrumbs over 6 weeks that lead up into some mini reveal that is actually one of the most important reveals in the history of the game. It doesn't make sense, Bungie. Like tell me something else and it'll make more sense. Or just own up. Say that Lightfall wasn't supposed to have all the answers because Final Shape will, and you wanted to save up for this big reveal. And the point again made by Mr. Brooks, who seems to just be kind of deflecting a lot of the community's feedback and trying to make it into, oh, we're trying something new and different. Like, please, that's not it. They're interesting points, but nonetheless, I think we all know Final Shape has way more weight on its shoulders than it does. There's the affirmation in this article that the seasonal stories are more serialized than they have ever been, and that is very true, and they've done a very good job at making sure each seasonal story is cohesive and it melds perfectly with the other seasons, and I'll give them kudos for that. The seasonal stories are worth your money, even if they're told over a long period of time. And, you know, I've already gone over binging this stuff is something I prefer to do. The breadcrumb way is a lot less enjoyable. But Final Shape has to be such a good ending to this saga that it just has to knock everyone's socks off. It does. And even then, there's gonna have to be some kind of unsolved thread, like they state in this, for people to come back for. Otherwise, no one's gonna come back. Anyways, I'll leave you with the thought that Final Shape has the weight of not just being the capstone of the Light and Dark saga, but also of following up Lightfall, which narratively means that it has a really good shot at being good because of how bad Lightfall was. And you kind of have to think maybe that was intentional. I'm not saying that it was, but it makes sense. You lower the expectation of everyone, that way when Final Shape does come out and it's either really good or the best expansion Bungie's put out since Taken King, and now granted Taken King was really good because of the fact that it was supposed to just be Destiny itself. You know, it was supposed to be the full game, but that didn't get released right away. It was just so much content and so much good content that people were like, oh my goodness. But quality over quantity, right, for Final Shape. If it's a good expansion, good story, that's okay. It doesn't have to give us 50 new maps, 50 new you know, it doesn't need to do that. It just needs to be really good. So, we'll see. We'll see. Sorry if I ranted a little bit in this video. You can go ahead and hash me in the comments if I did. Let me know what you think about this article. I'll leave it in the description if you'd like to read the full thing yourself. It's definitely worth a read. Again, I just think most of it is half-truth or Bungie trying to cover up a blunder, or, like I said, maybe this was intentional. Anyways, I'll see you guys all next time.